This is episode number 1 with Gar Benn. Welcome to the Growth Podcast with myself, David O'Connor, where my goal is to interview world-class guests so you can constantly progress as a person in terms of your training, your mindset and nutrition. So without further ado, let's dive in. How are we keeping, guys? And a massive welcome to the very first episode of the Growth Podcast. And as well, I just want to say a big thank you too for taking the time to download this and tune into the first one, because I know you mightn't have a clue what to expect with it. But basically what I want for you to take away from these is actionable points that you can go away and implement straight into your life. Whether that's some stuff related to mindset, training or nutritional stuff, that the end goal is just to move you forward with, hence what the term growth is all about. Now, I'd love to be able to get these out as frequent as I can, but we're running Doc Fitness, coaching guys here and coaching guys online. I'm going to say right now, these will be a monthly occurrence, and hopefully over time, I'll be able to bump it up a bit more. So today, our City Gym owner, Gar Benn from Limerick here in Ireland. He's also a precision nutrition coach. He's a strength and conditioning coach, and he's the head strength coach at City Gym as well. Like, their main focus is a powerlifting facility, and the strength of the lads and the ladies coming out of there is just insane, to say the least. So today we dive into all things strength, training in general, and where to get started with that all. And we'll cover some things like why you should bother to be strong and what that means to you. Where do you get started with resistance training and how to start getting strong? What are the fundamental principles that you need to know going forward that you will hold on to for life as well? That's the key there with that one. And how to consistently progress every single week you step foot in the gym. How to get past some sticking points when you will come to them. And as well, some of Gar's lessons from 2016. And there's a lot more tidbits in there throughout. So yeah, I'm going to stop ranting and raving, and I'm going to welcome Gar onto the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me on, man. It's an absolute honour to be guest number uno on the podcast. And my name is Gar Benn. I'm a coach. I have my own gym in Limerick called City Gym Limerick. And I'm also a coach with the popular nutrition website, sigmanutrition.com.
And Gar, one thing that I'm kind of want to start off this podcast with, and it's something I've heard a lot in the past as well, is if you were to explain what you do to somebody on passing in 10 seconds or less, what would you say?
In terms of what you mean on passing?
If you literally had 10 seconds to talk to someone and tell them what you did, like a speed dating, what you do session.
Right. I like it. I get people strong and jacked for a living, so I have a good job.
Brilliant. It's always nice to get that clear and concise why behind it all. So Gar, on the topic today, we're talking all things strength, getting strong and general training and where to go with all that. So I suppose the first thing I want to do to get the ball rolling is, why are we bothering to sit down on a podcast and go through strength as a whole? Like, why should somebody be focused on getting strong, we'll say?
Well, strength affects just so many different aspects of people's lives, and probably some stuff that people don't even realize. But like at the basic fundamentals, strength is just it's something that everybody should have. Like, you should be able to move your body weight through a space. You should be able to move external weight, and that carries over to everywhere in life. Whether you lift weights for a sport like powerlifting, like people in my gym here would, whether you're on the field playing a sport, it is so beneficial to be strong there. Or whether you're just maybe a general pop, like everyday type of guy or girl, like you need to be strong to prevent something bad happening to you.
Yeah, as well, like you're coming from a powerlifting background, we're coming from a transformation facility down here in Galway, and one of the biggest things we see is people just lack of complete strength as a whole, and then they're wondering why years on the line they've back problems, they've this, that and the other, and then when they get that level of strength, it opens up a whole new world in their head, like, you know, and the confidence that comes along with that too is massive, I think. So, no, it's always nice to kind of get that little primer going. But from here, I just want to start at a very, very basic starting point. And if I walked into your gym, Gar, where in God's name do I start? And this could be aimed at someone like who is maybe not in a gym currently and thinking about starting, or it could be someone who's doing something now but they're doing biceps an hour 3 times a week and they need some structure. So yeah, where does somebody start?
Yeah, so if someone came in off the road, again, it is all level depending, but we'll just say someone comes in and they have absolutely no idea of what's going to happen in a strength gym. They want to go in and they might have a goal to get a bit stronger and look a bit better. We'll take them in, you're going to do some sort of movement screen with them. So just make sure that there's no possibilities that when you load a movement that they're going to get hurt. After you get the all clear with that, you're going to just, what I personally start with is something like some very, very basic squatting and hip hinging. Just really easy stuff. Some counterweight squats to make sure that they get the concept of the movement, because as you know yourself, man, when you have someone fresh who's never done that movement before, squat is a completely alien move, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, someone just doesn't know what to do. And then in terms of a hip hinge to pick up a deadlift, an RDL, or whatever you're going to be teaching, that concept just, it eludes people so much. So just really easy stuff to start with, get the movements right, and then start loading it up. As the months progress, start introducing some different moves around that. But basically the first thing for us is to always get those core movements correct.
Nice. Movement quality above all. Yeah, like we do it without even sometimes they know what we're bringing them through. Like when somebody starts, it all depends, as you said, on what level that person is at.
Yeah.
Like you might have someone who kind of plays sport a bit in their life and they kind of get certain movements, where you have someone who sits in a desk all day long and they're wondering why they cannot get into a certain position, but they still might not even kind of get those, we'll say, I don't know, moving patterns, if we want to put it in an easy term, to do a squat compared to the guys playing sport, even though they might have never done anything together. Like, but going from that screening, it's all like setting up a foundation for you. Like, but what you usually see people doing is they go into a gym and they're sitting in a machine or a treadmill, and then they've no structure formed at all. So, right, we're started off with a screening to kind of get the basic movement patterns down. And I know you've talked about they're progressing on months or whatever, but first, we're focusing on movement quality and movements. We'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. But if you were to look at an overall, let's say, program of structure on getting strong, training 101, what are the fundamentals, let's say, without the training, getting too deep into the training now, what are the fundamentals we need to be looking at?
So the fundamentals, so like what fundamental moves would we use, is it?
Let's say, even before that, what entails a proper program for getting strong?
Oh, okay. So basically, as we said, you got to pick the most, would say, basic movements that someone can do correctly and pain-free. So like that's the thing. Like a lot of times, again, we are a powerlifting gym, so we focus primarily on squat, bench, and deadlift. But I would take a lot of one-to-ones or personal training sessions where people can't do these moves without a ton of pain, because they might have had previous injuries in life and stuff like that, or maybe their job doesn't allow them to be free. We have a couple of people who do, for example, like tattoos and stuff. They're tattoo artists, and they'd work 4 to 8 hours on a piece, and they come in and their whole lat is really messed up. So you have to take into consideration a number of factors. But like, to get to the real nitty gritty, pick the most basic movements that you can do, that you can move through pain free. So I think that was the question you were asking there, is it?
You answered that brilliantly, but it wasn't a specific question I was asking. I don't want to sound like a dick. I don't want to sound like a dick for saying that. But no, okay. Look, what I mean is, in terms of, if you were to look at the macro level of consistency, adherence, progressive overload, simple stuff like that. Like, what are the main components going forward that someone needs to look at? I've probably already named them there. Like, but again, from your viewpoint.
Oh yeah, no, I pick you up perfectly now. Yeah, so basically, probably the first thing would be adherence. Just like you said there a second ago. So a lot of people, like when they start strength training, they're not in any way compliant with the gym. Like, they've never put it into their daily habit or their weekly habits. So the first thing is to get people coming consistently. And a lot of times that what you want to kind of look at there is the volume or intensity that you're going to throw at people. Because imagine like you came into the gym day one and you threw something at someone that was so difficult that they were broken up for like 4 or 5 days afterwards. There's no way they're coming back to you. You know what I mean? There's no way they're going to say, oh my God, that shit is not for me. I was bust up and I don't like it whatsoever. So like, to get someone adhering properly, you probably have to start give a lot of detail as to why you're doing something and start building up their foundation and knowledge. Then after that, do an adequate amount of volume intensity that they're okay and that they recover well enough to come back for their next session. Again, it's going to depend on how many people do per week, but overall that's what's going to lead to their long-term progression.
Yeah. And Gar, I suppose I'm gonna dumb it down even further. You're talking about adherence, showing up consistently. It's probably the number one factor that people miss is just stay consistent. Like, because even if you're doing something arseways, you're going to make progress if you're consistent with that thing you're doing anyway. So that's fine. People get that. I think they know. But like with volume and intensity, what does that exactly mean for somebody who's starting fresh? Does that mean how many hours they spend in the gym? Does that mean how many moves they do? How many reps they do? Just a very, very layman's terms way of putting it. What do you mean by volume and intensity?
That's a good question, man. So like your volume will be your overall workload per session, and of course your cumulative volume is what builds up over the weeks and months. Then your intensity is how hard you work within that volume. So of course then you can go into the whole thing of like volume and intensity. They have to be like inversely proportional. So if you have like a lot of volume, like you're doing a lot of different exercises, a lot of sets, a lot of reps, obviously your intensity can't be through the roof, and vice versa. If you have a lot of intensity, you can't be doing like 8 sets of 10 at 90%. You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah, because again, if somebody who's starting from scratch, and especially if they do a little activity outside the gym as well, like somebody who does have an office job, they come in, and even if they do a couple of sets of a moving pattern at bodyweight, they're going to have DOMs the next day. They're going to have that muscle breakdown. Yeah. Do you know, like, and I think people don't realize how kind of, we'll say, slow and steady they can start and enjoy the fucking thing going forward. Because as you've already said, you beat up someone, they're not going to want to come back. They're going to believe that they need to be, or that after every session they might be that sore, etc., etc. Like, again, I think as well, you're looking at this now from maybe a different population. I'm looking at it from a different population, so there's probably a bit of confusion there going, I mean, amongst the two. But like, I'm thinking of somebody starting who is, if you compare that to somebody who's coming out of college versus somebody who is a parent and they haven't done that in 4 or 5 years. So again, levels and differences. So adherence, number one. You have volume intensity is basically the workload you do, the sets and the reps, that kind of crack. Is there any main kind of factors, anything else we'll say there, that is involved in their overall macro level of program?
Yeah, well, I suppose you'd look at like we're kind of just going through the Eric Helms strength pyramid here. That guy is a genius. But like, I suppose the next thing will be like your exercise selection, what you would choose for someone to do. Because as you brought up a while ago, there's a lot of people, if we were to go away from someone who isn't just fresh in the gym and has never touched the bar before, if you look at someone who's maybe a beginner or intermediate level, there's this concept that people should be like doing bicep curls and pec flies like just all day long. And like, if you kind of go down that route of someone who's trying to progress and they're kind of stuck, well, it's probably because they're doing bicep curls and pec flies every single day and they're forgetting the most basic compound movements and how to progress those. You know, so that would be, for me, that would be the next step to jump onto, would be to look at most people at that level would probably do extremely well 3 to 4 times a week on a full body program. You know what I mean? I think that carries through. You probably even find it, even though we, as you're saying, we do train people with a high amount of differences, you probably find that method would work for you as well, right?
Yeah, like our main programming is based around 3 days a week, main lifting sessions, if you like. And within that, the biggest thing we want to get to people is movement quality and the movements that they actually do. So I know we've talked about consistency and volume and that kind of crack in a bit, but this is like the fundamental of what we teach first, and we kind of go backwards from here. So we look at things in terms of the human movements. So we look at squat, pushing things, pulling things, hinge movements, hip hinge movements, core work, single leg work. And you know yourself, within that framework or that template of those human movements, you have such a vast area of exercise you can bring on. And that's where as well I think the meat and bones of people are going to take away from this podcast as well is there, because no matter if you're a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, or somebody who just wants to lose a bit of weight and tone up, your training should be based around those to an extent. I don't want to say should, because nothing is ever like that should. You have to do this exact thing. But again, human movements, I think they are a set of principles that are there to follow, and they can fit into kind of any person's life, really.
For sure. And then like, even as you're saying, like, there's a lot of people that would still, after they do those basic movements, they would still want the big arms or, you know, bigger shoulders or whatever. So like, once you've done the compound movements and you're kind of looking for a lot of body shape stuff, well, then you can train your isolation stuff afterwards. You You know what I mean? Like, that's what we say to a lot of our guys here. Just get the basics out of the way. And the basics cover like 80-90% of what you're looking for. Then if you want, you can throw in all the isolation work you want after that.
Perfect.
But just get the basics out of the way, which will be the bulk of your work.
Brilliant. Gar, I'm going to spend a bit more time on this because I think we're onto something good here. Right.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I'm going to get you to backtrack. I know 90% of the people probably know what we're talking about when we say compound movements. Dumb it down even further. What do you mean? Compound movements or what?
So multi-joint movements that involve a lot of the body. Your squats, your deadlifts, your rowing movements, chin-up, pull-up, anything that involves a heavy amount of musculature.
Brilliant. And then you're saying, right, someone has to cover those bases at a baseline level. It's like 90% of what they need to do. Or
yes.
You can only say the way I kind of say it too sometimes to people is it's the 80-20 of what you're looking at. So
exactly.
Yeah. Now, this is where you can make the differences between somebody who's more like wants to get bigger arms, or somebody who wants to focus more on their sport for performance, or somebody that just wants to know how the hell to train to tone up. After you've the kind of bases covered, then you can dive into things like, as you said, isolation movements for getting bigger arms, bigger shoulders. Mm-hmm. You might have that's kind of generally what you're looking at for bodybuilder stuff, is accessory movements for the main lifts as well, and similar to powerlifting too, like accessory movements to bring up your squat, bench and deadlift.
There you go.
And somebody's looking at fat loss, toning up in general. It could be it's nearly like a bodybuilding style program. It could be more conditioning moves. It could be like rope conditioning, boxing bag stuff. But again, it's like the fundamentals are already done in place, and now you can go away and get the extra benefits out of, let's say, what other exercises you're going to pop in after that. And that's all individual to what somebody wants. So if you were to look at, let's say, Doc Fitness compared to City Gyms, what we do, our volume is a lot higher. Intensity is probably a lot lower compared to you guys, where your volume is lower, let's say, but intensity is a lot higher. And that's simply because you're a powerlifting focused gym, we're a transformation based gym. So they're the two main differences that I think we're trying to get across. Compounds first, what comes after that then is kind of specific to your goal. Exactly.
Like we talked about, if people in Doc Fitness are looking for to bring up some weak areas with some bicep curls or lateral raises or whatever body part they want to bring up, a lot of our guys will do, after the main compound movements, stuff that's like a prehab almost, like to make sure that their joints and muscles stay in good nick all year round while they're training. You know, because it's not that they don't care about body shape. Like, as you know from doing the compound movements, you get in good shape regardless, but they wouldn't care about having like absolutely massive biceps, you know?
Yeah.
So they do stuff that would just be looking after their joints a little bit more, some full range movements, just to make sure everything sits nice and healthy for their next session.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think as well that people miss the fact that, like, if you're training to get strong, you're going to look better naked no matter what you do, as long as the nutrition is on point. Like,
there you go.
So okay, we have some basic exercise selection. We talked about some human movement stuff and kind of what I look for when we're putting into a program. So, and you already mentioned it, then you kind of backed it up with the compound stuff. So you have squat, push, pull, hinge.
There you go.
We put a big emphasis on, especially when somebody's in the gym the first few months, is just basic core work. Working that core as a full cylinder, because you'd be amazed at how people don't know how to turn on their core. They don't know how to activate their glutes, etc., etc. So we're big on that as a start, and even going forward, then we love bringing in more advanced core drills, like really, really tough ones that are very, very hard in each progression, but you get a lot out of them from, let's say, like even 20-30 second work out of them. But moving on from exercise selection, we'll say, and movements, Gar, if you were to take a typical, let's just say I came to Gar and I've been in the gym a while, I've been attempting to do some squats, I've been avoiding deadlifts because I haven't a clue what I'm at, and my bench is terrible, I don't know what I'm doing, but I let my ego get in the way and I try and keep pushing every week and just random reps and following the latest program I find online or on YouTube or what some Instagram person has popped up. But now I'm looking to progress. I'm looking to, let's say, go into the gym. I want to ultimately, just very, very basic, I want to get stronger and I want to bring up my squat, my bench, my deadlift. What the hell do I need to do?
Yeah, now, I know this is going to sound pretty funny because it's going to sound like I'm doing a sales pitch, but this isn't for me. I mean, like, wherever you are, if you're listening to this nationwide or international or whatever, if you don't know, first thing is find a good coach who does know. So I think that's always very important, because there's loads of stuff that you could learn yourself, but only if you look and listen to the right people. So if you look and listen to the wrong person, you could spend years, and I don't know about you, man, but I spent years going in the wrong direction ever before I became a coach. I was doing just the wrong stuff consistently, was getting injured, so I made like every mistake in the book. So that's number one thing I always say to people, is that like, if you're looking to enter the sport of powerlifting or get extremely strong, look for a good coach who can break the movements down for you into small logical steps, who can show you their programming methods and kind of even outline the weights for you for a good few weeks, or percentages for a good few weeks ahead, so that you know exactly where you're going. And it's not kind of, all right, we'll go in every single day and max out. You know, now I know I strayed away from the question there, but I do think that's probably the most important point, is to have a good coach that can outline basic principles in programming and form for you.
No,
right?
Dead right, Gar, because last year, a few years ago, when I was actually in UL down in Limerick, I remember going to the gym like with some friends, but I knew there was a few guys there that were hurling, and they had coaches underneath them. They had S&C coaches underneath them, and only God knows what they were doing in their programs and stuff. But the biggest thing I noticed as the weeks and months went on, the differences in their progression and my progression was absolutely huge, and that was a big eye opener for me. Like, and that's when I eventually started to get onto someone, because I think when you're younger, or even when you're older, like especially with men, you have to let the ego get out of the way, or else you'll never progress. Like, and I think, as you already said it, whatever about doing something on your own, yeah, it's fine, and you might do okay. You're still going to advance yourself years when you have a coach under you, and that goes for anyone, no matter what it is. It doesn't have to be to do with sport; it's to do with anything in general. Once you have a coach showing you the principles and the fundamentals of what you need to do, and go away and do in the gym, we'll say every single week, or like City Gym, like Doc Fitness, you have a coach with your eyes on you every single session. It's nearly like the ultimate scenario of what you want. Like, but I think it's a no-brainer, and if anything, it takes away the guesswork of what you need to be doing too. Like, I've talked a lot about this recently too, and even for myself, like, I remember I got onto you a few months back, and then I pulled my groin. I was looking to get some coaching off you for some powerlifting stuff. But my biggest thing back then was I didn't want to have to sit down and do all this program and stuff for myself. I just wanted to hand it over and say, right, Gar, give me something so I can go in and follow it. So again, I think, yeah, we might have gone off on a bit of a rant there, like, but having a coach is fundamental. It's a no-brainer. You can go your own way, but again, like, what's the return going to be from that?
There you go.
But yeah, no, look, I'm going to keep it on the topic of I want to get strong. So, like, on the squat, bench and deadlift, if you were to look at let's just say, I'm going to make it easier for you. I come in a typical week and you have me training 3 full body sessions or whatever, and I'm squatting, benching, deadlifting in some shape or form across that week. What I mean by and how do I progress, I'm talking about progressive overload, like in terms of
so like no I get you completely. Sorry, I know I went off on a tangent a minute ago, but I just thought that was a really important point to bring up. And also your tangent was great about just the ego itself, because that's really important. Just put the ego away. But then in terms of progression, like when you're working with sub-maximal loads, which it always should be, because like if you're working with a proper max, if you're trying to like hit a 1 rep max every time you go to the gym, well then you're kind of trying to display your strength rather than build it. And that's not going to get you far at all. You know, like you might be able to display it once or twice, and you keep hitting your 1 rep max over and over for weeks and weeks, and what you'll find is you actually start coming down. You know, so like you might hit a fucking, whether if you're a beginner, you might hit a 50 or 60 kilo bench Monday, hit it again on Friday, hit it again on Monday. All of a sudden the Friday after, you start coming back down. You're just too fatigued and beat up. So when you're working with sub-maximal loads, can you increase the weight that's on the bar or the volume of what you've previously done? There's some really easy ways to get stronger. So we'll just say you did 3 sets of 5 at 60 kilos on the bench. Can you do a 3x5 at 62.5 the week after? Just a really small incremental increase. Or instead of doing 3x5 at 60 and then going 3x5 at 62.5, could you do 3 sets of 6 the week after? So just an additional rep per set. So there's so many things that you can play around with there. And I think the appropriate way to kind of see where you should go is to kind of look at what you've previously done. Brilliant. So like when someone comes to you, kind of look at what volumes they've worked with, look at what's worked well for them at that time, and then build on those from there. Again, like you can highlight whatever weak points are in their previous programming and then work on those as well, but kind of look at what's worked, because when you start lifting, when you're in that beginner and intermediate stage, your strength should increase phenomenally and very, very quickly. Then you'll kind of notice it tapping out after quite a while, and that's when programming will have to get a lot smarter, and you'll have to take into account a ton of other variables, because as you get stronger and stronger, you also get more fatigued because you're moving more weight, more volume, just everything gets that little bit tougher. But that's a different rant for a different time. But did I finally answer your question there?
You did. No, perfectly. And I love the way we're kind of tying it both into like, I think we're getting across in a way where anybody can kind of take away this. That's my goal with this first podcast anyway, is I don't want to get too far into like more advanced stuff like you just said, but you've mentioned two things there, is either coming in week after week, if there's more weight on the bar, or if there's more volume of what you've already done. So you said 3x5 in a certain movement, and you might do a certain weight. The next week, if you're up 2.5 kilos in that, it could be smaller, it could be a bit more, you've progressed. And then what you've kind of mentioned, yes, for somebody who's more advanced going forward, is the fatigue thing. Are you tired? We'll say you're not recovered. After that 62.5 the week after, could you have got another rep or two in you? That's what I always make sure our guys have as well, to make sure that on a typical week that they're not killing themselves for no reason. Yes, there is certain times of the month where we might push that bit harder, because I think even if we don't need to, somebody learns a lot about themselves too, and the fact that they can do so much more, you know, especially when it comes to maybe condition stuff. Gar, I'm not sure, do you do much condition stuff in City Gym? Like, but let's just say after your compound movements, we have our conditioning moves. That's where we really ramp it up, because you're not putting much resistance against your body, and they can kind of get away with away with recovering a lot faster from that too. But weight on the bar, or are you do more volume when you come in each week? Two fundamental forms of progressing right there.
There you go. And I think another cool thing that we've kind of adapted down here for people, we'll say this isn't for our powerlifters solely, because our powerlifters have programs that they're pretty strict with. This would more so be for John, who's 50, who works in an office all day, and you know, like Mary, who's a college student who comes in afterwards. So people who have a lot of external stressors going on, you know. So there's just so many things that can affect you. Like even, are you sleeping correctly at night? Are you eating correctly? So you might come in, if you're not solely focused on moving the maximum amount of weight like a powerlifter is, you might come in any given state on any day. So we'll just say you're squatting, we'll stick with 3x5, it's just something handy. We'll say you're doing 3x5 at 60. What we get someone to do is RPE the overall sets. So now, just to go into that, like an RPE is the rate of perceived exertion. Now, normally it's done on a single set, but what we do is an overall session. So what that means, it's a scalable 1 to 10, 1 being you're super fresh afterwards, and 10 being max. So you're absolutely wrecked. That's the most you could have done. We don't ever like to see people at 10, right? So let's say you did 3x5 at 60 week 1. You RPE that at 6 out of 10, right? Yeah. So you say to yourself, 6 out of 10, there's more left in the tank. Just like you were saying, like you ask if there's 1 or 2 left in the tank. I would RPE it. So it is very, very similar. Then you look at the week after, you go 3x5 at 62.5, might be a 7 out of 10, right? Everything's going good. The week after, you go 3x5 at 65, but you know what? You were really messed up because maybe your newborn baby woke up at 3 a.m. and kept you up till 6 a.m. and then you had to go to work for the day. So that 3x5 at 65, that could have been a 9 out of 10 or a 9.5 out of 10. Yeah. So what you could do then is you have the choice to scale it back, or you could hit the same weight next week and see how that rates. So you don't have to necessarily progress every week in that sense, because you could be progressing in an RPE sense as well. Yes. So a weight that you moved that was extremely tough for you last week or last month, when you come back to it, was it easier? Because that's a progression as well. You know what I mean? So we've got that sort of RPE progression, the weight progression, or the volume progression, just like you were talking about there. I think that's really good, just for people, for like general everyday people who are strength training, that they can just kind of overlook everything. And like, we put all this into Excel for people as well, so they'll just write it in afterwards, and they can look back over weeks of training and see, Jesus, I was really wrecked that 1 week, but then the week after everything came back together. So it's good just to look back over it and see where you were as well.
Yes.
You know?
No, definitely. And even with that, with the RPE scale, that is something I've been using the last about 2 or 3 years for my own training, and I've never gone by percentages, only up until probably about 6 months ago, believe it or not. And again, that worked brilliant for me when I'm hurling across the week. I might be doing 3 to 4 hurling sessions and be absolutely bet asunder. So when I come in, and if I did certain weight last week and I know there's no way I can progress in that, or if I do, I might get crappy technique or whatever it is, so I'll just simply either do the same weight. I might even pull back some weeks, it depends, like. But we try and teach our guys that in the gym. We do it 2 ways. For the guys that are more interested in their training, look, I'm going to call a spade here. Not everybody wants to be tracking things on logbooks and Excel files.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so we have 2 main populations: the guys that are a bit more serious into it, they do track things, and then the guys that would say that just want to come in and train and get the results. We judge them by quote unquote reps left in the tank, which is the exact same thing. So we normally use 2 to 3 to 4 reps left in the tank on any given week, and that's basically it. Like, it's, as you said, you have weight progression, you have a volume progression, which you can look at reps, you could look at time in an exercise, which a lot of people do when they're busy on the road and stuff like that, and then you can look at your reps left in the tank or your rate of perceived exertion. So they're brilliant, like. And then, Gar, I suppose it's no harm touching on the fact though as well, like, yeah, you might have somebody who comes into the gym and they start doing these movements, they start progressing, they start getting stronger as each week comes by, or every 2 weeks, whatever it is, they're doing more than what they did last time. But what happens when somebody does start to hit a phase where they can't put more weight on a certain exercise, or they can't get more reps in because they're just hitting a wall? Like, it's no harm mentioning it, even if somebody's nowhere near that. It's no harm mentioning it, because at least they know what they can do down the line when they get to that level, we'll say.
That's true, and it's really good just to look at the overall picture if that's the case. For example, if everything else in your program is still progressing, but just this one exercise isn't, then you kind of have to say, well, what's going wrong there? Or maybe you do a 4-day-a-week plan, and one of those days is suffering. So first thing you should probably look at, again, like, I know we touched on this already, like, are you sleeping well? What's your stress like? What's your nutrition like? Just look at the, like, stuff that can affect it without ever stepping foot inside a gym. Once that's there, kind of look at the overall program. And I'll give you an example of this. We have one of our coaches here, Arthur, who's, as you know, he's an absolute monster, right? And what he was finding is that he used to squat and deadlift on the same day. And then would say the next day he was benching and overhead pressing. It was something like that. I just remember he squatted and deadlifted on the same day.
Yeah.
And what he found is that every time he got to the deadlift, his squat shot up massively from, I think, a 235 to 250, which is just, it's immense weight for a 93 lifter to be doing. But then what he found is by the time he came around to deadlifts and training, he just did not have the gas in the tank to move some weight. And I remember him saying to me one week, he's a 300 kilo deadlifter, which again is massive. And I remember him saying to me one week, it was either 240 or 250. He couldn't move it for a single because he was so fatigued after the squats that particular day. So what he did was he took the deadlift out of that day and put it right to the end of the week. And then the week after, he actually hit 290 for a single. What he was doing was working up to one heavy single before scaling back. So he couldn't hit 240 or 250 one week. The week after, by just changing the program around a little bit, he was able to progress past. Now, that's only a short-term solution. I'm not saying like you'll shoot up and weight like Arthur did, but the point I'm trying to get at here is look at the structure of your overall program and see if any one particular day could be detrimental to the next. If that's not the case, maybe you're just working at too high of an intensity for what you're capable of at that moment. So scale it back a little bit. Try, see if there's some maybe technical issues going on.
Yeah.
Maybe your form isn't the best or something like that. And by dialing in that form with a lighter weight, maybe you'll work back up to the weight you were stuck at and you might even blow past it. You know?
Brilliant.
Or the last thing, you might just need to hammer home some volume with that particular move. There's a lot of moves that just require more time to refine it, more time to get used to it. And again, as I said, when you come back to the heavier weight, put the ego away, when you get back there, you're going to blow past it.
No, brilliant. So I think what you've put in a nutshell is pull back to push forward type thing.
Yep.
2 steps forward, 3 steps, or 2 steps, was it?
2 steps back, 3 forward.
So again, look, I think as well, if you were to get to that stage, you've obviously done something right along the way. But again,
exactly.
If you're getting to that stage and if your technique is just god awful or something's going wrong, again, get onto a coach. It's the no-brainer thing to do. But there's no harm bringing up those points that you may need to pull back in certain things. You may need to refine technique to move forward, like from there. And I've done that on numerous occasions the last 2 years, and now it's only now where I'm really happy with certain things. And even at that, I know I might be pushing things maybe a bit too much now, so you need to be careful with things going forward and listen to how you're moving things in the gym too on a weekly basis. And I think, as you said as well, like when Arthur changed around these movements to a different day, if we've someone as well that misses a day in the week, let's just say if they're scheduled to train on Tuesday morning and they miss it, and they say, can I come in Wednesday evening to do that session I missed? And let's just say it's heavy squats, but they're back in again Thursday morning doing their deadlifts. Is it ideal for them to do that? Et cetera, et cetera. So we change that around too, depending on that suits them and their actual life, because you might be working, you might be getting 4 or 5, 6 hours sleep one night, and that's going to massively affect you the next day, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not all a case of come into the week, just do your moving, stay consistent, you'll be grand. You have to take into account real life, like I think as well, massively, and just managing all that fatigue and managing all that life stresses or whatever it is.
Exactly, it's hugely important. I had a competition only Sunday gone there, and I had great crack at it, but I put in probably the worst performance of my entire life. I missed numbers that I even hit in the gym, but the week leading up to it, I was with my missus in the maternity for the whole week. We thought the baby was my missus is 8 months pregnant, so we actually thought the baby was coming. She's like, Jesus, the contractions are heavy. We went to the maternity. We had about 3 or 4 sleepless nights, and when I went in on the day, it's the kind of the bummer thing about powerlifting that no matter how many months you've done correct training for it, all does come down to one day. When I went in on the day, just the power wasn't there. I couldn't even hit the numbers that I've hit in the gym. A great crack regardless, but as you said, that could apply to anyone in any stage of their life where, like, that level of fatigue, sleeping for 3 hours night after night after night, it catches up on you and it really reduces power. And if it was any other time of the year, which I didn't have a comp, I probably would have toned back training to something like 50 or 60%. And just got some reps in of movement just to feel good and get the blood pumping. I probably wouldn't have pushed anything in that particular week, but it just so happened to coincide with a comp, so it had to be done. But like, if someone else is stressed, they might have a very stressful job. Maybe they're always fighting with their missus or their fella. These are all external stresses that cause dips in performance. So you probably shouldn't try to push it to a real extreme amount of weight or intensity on the days after. Just tone it back a little bit, take it nice and easy, and then progress the week after or the month after when things come back around.
Yeah. Congratulations, Gar, by the way.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you so much.
But yeah, saying that though, I think it's just a matter of, on those days when you are wrecked, it's a matter of showing up, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And like, you have to look at, again, it's going to be certain populations. Like with the lifters here, even when they come in tired, they still have to put in the performance because there's always a comp coming around. There's always a comp close enough, Yeah. But whether if you're general pop or, as you said, you gave a great example a while ago, saying like how you used to, you were training 3 times a week on the pitch and then playing 1 time a week. Like, every single week is going to differ so much. Training intensities on the pitch is going to be different. The teams that you're playing every week are going to be different. So there's different intensity that goes into every single game that you play. So every time you come back to the gym, it's going to be just a completely different ball game. And as you said, you RPE'd a few years and got amazing results. And I couldn't agree with you more. That's a perfect way to look at external stressors. It's a really good way to do it. And that's why you've probably made so much progression over the years, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of that comes back to the mental game of it too. Like, but I think especially like our main goal here sometimes is just to give our members a ring and give them a kick in the arse to get back in the gym. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if they miss 1 or 2 sessions, they're on their case. But a lot of the time, it's staying consistent with showing up week after week, no matter how you feel. And it's easier said than done. Believe me, I know. But on those days where you're wrecked tired, it's not a matter of fooling yourself into thinking, oh, I'm tired today, I'm not going to do much in the gym, so I'm not going to bother going. Whereas if you just show up and do the bare minimum you need to do, you're going to leave feeling fucking ecstatic in yourself, number one, and you're still going to progress to the long term, number two.
There you go. And like, even we'll talk about, like, if you are fatigued going into a gym, and we'll say that volume is, we'll just say the weight moved by the sets, by the reps, at a tough weight, because that's the way I kind of look at volume. It's not kind of all the easy stuff that adds up. Now, I know it does play a factor, but it's all the working sets that add up, right? So we'll just say your working sets are at 60 1 week, and that's 8 out of 10 or 8.5 out of 10. But then the next week you come in fatigued. Your working weight at an RPE of 8 or 9 will probably be about 10 or 20% down. So you're probably still eliciting a great training factor for what you can do on that particular day. Brilliant. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So you're still getting adequate work for that day that you come in. So I think you're dead right in saying that people have to drop the attitude of, you know, oh, sure, Jesus, I'll be doing nothing in there anyway because I'm tired. It's, as you're saying, it's just show up, be accountable to your coach and to yourself. At the end of the day, like, if someone doesn't show up, they're kind of only fooling themselves, because like both the coach and the person only want results for that person.
Yeah, it's taking responsibility, isn't it?
There you go. Spot on, man.
Taking 100% responsibility. Okay.
Love it.
I think sometimes, though, people need to be reminded of that. Like, just
for sure. Yeah,
wake up. Like, okay, Gar, I think I'm going to round it up with clashing goals. We've kind of gone back and forth between somebody who is just in off the street, as you say, and then we've gone through somebody who's a powerlifter. What if you have somebody who wants to drop body fat, tone up as they call it, and build maybe a small bit of muscle, nothing crazy? Whereas if somebody who wants to take part in a powerlifting competition, we've already kind of chatted about it, but I just want to kind of drive home the point that not that much is going to change, is it? In terms of the overall, how you progress, the overall components of a program, in terms of like the compounds. Yes, obviously reps, sets, that will be different, but does everything else change is what I'm kind of getting at.
So does everything? So what you're asking is, does everything else change between, so sets and reps are changing, yes, and what are the other major differences? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, essentially, because I think people are going to leave this thinking maybe that's for me, that's not for me. I want people to realise that getting strong, dropping body fat, looking better naked, feeling more confident, getting strong for sport, getting strong for powerlifting, there's going to be the same components to an extent across the board.
There you go, yeah.
The principles are going to be there, is what I'm trying to say. Jesus, why didn't I just say that first? So, yeah, look, I suppose it's a review back over the principles of already what we've gone through. And just cement in what people need to be doing, I suppose. So yeah, look, we'll approach this more of a roundup rather than kind of confusing you with a stupid question. So let's round up the principles of what we've gone through, Gar. Starting from the top down, you started off with screening someone when they come into the gym. So from that, then we were checking out, could they do proper movements, could they squat, hip hinge, etc., push pull, whatever it is. After you've gone through that stage, we went into adherence, and then we went into volume and stuff. But yeah, what else? What is the recapping over of what we've just gone through?
So recap over. Make sure your movement quality is good. Make sure the tissues in the body are flush and that you don't have a potential injury coming. Then start with the basic movements and start with adherence. Make sure you're turning up consistently. If you outline to yourself that you want to do 3 or 4 days per week, at least say to yourself, for the next 2 months, I'm going to do that. You know, just make a very, very simple plan to begin with and stick to it. When you come in, either get a coach or find a clever plan, or even start learning about different volumes, intensities, and different moves that were going to suit you. Again, we talked about the pain-free, do movements that are correct for you. After that, find a way to progress every move, whether it's through increasing weight on the bar, increasing reps per set, or even increasing sets, and make sure that your RPs are on point all the time. Then after that, then just keep progressing, keep sticking at it. I think that's pretty much the whole roundup of it.
Yeah.
With that as well, as we were saying, there isn't much differences between, we'll say, what people are looking to specialize in. A lot of the time, it's going to be no matter what you're trying to achieve, whether it's you're trying to slim down, using weight on the bar, you're trying to bulk up using weight on the bar, or you're trying to focus on strength. It's all going to be based around very basic barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, body weight movements progressing. Of course, there is an element of speciality of each one of those where you have to change it, but overall it's going to be the basics will always work for all of those, and then specialize from there.
Brilliant. No, I think that rounds it up, because yes, you might have somebody in the gym that's currently doing X, Y, or Z machines, and as we said, like, it was funny, I only mentioned doing 40 minutes of bicep curls at the start because I was actually picking up my friend a few weeks ago from gym over the road, and he was saying, oh, you wouldn't believe what I just saw. And I was like, what? And he goes, I came into the gym and there was a guy there ahead of me, and he looked like he was there for a good few minutes because he was already sweating or whatever, and he said he was there for a full 40 minutes doing about 5 or 6 different variations of a bicep curl. And I was just like, oh my god, the poor lad. He was only in his 16, 17, he was thinking. But like, again, it's getting that, it's making that point clear on what you need to do in terms of compound movements, progress the fucking things, get onto a coach, make sure your movements are proper, and that's going to produce the results you want over time to get strong, to drop body fat, whatever it is. And then as well, for somebody who's looking from the outside in, thinking that a gym only involves treadmills and step aerobics, whatever it is, again, like, the differences don't change. This is something you should be doing, I personally think, like, because there's no way in the world I'd ever recommend somebody to go to do a step aerobics class when they can get under a bar, get strong, do you know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's crazy sometimes. So, Gar, I want to round up with one simple question. And
shoot.
We're just into 2017. So, what is the biggest thing that you've learned last year?
What is the biggest thing that I've learned? This is actually a really good question, because I was only talking with this with one of the guys, one of my coaches. I think the biggest thing that I learned, and it's going to sound weird as a statement, but I'll get into just a very, very small bit, is just be a good human. I know that's a ridiculously vague thing to say, but we were very fortunate last year in how much the business here at City Gym grew, and the community that we got involved, and the communities that we spilled into. It was absolutely amazing. We were very fortunate with how much the coaching with Sigma Nutrition skyrocketed, and even with Danny getting over 1 million listens on the podcast, it was just amazing.
Unreal.
So the thing that we kind of realized, that the principle behind everything that we were doing was we were just being good humans, like, all the time. We thought kind of like, we'll say, the exact opposite to selfish. We were just selfless. We're like, okay, we have to look at the business as a business where it has to make money. But when we were just being really good to people, that took care of itself. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that would always take care. You look after people, and they're going to talk about you. You give out good content in a podcast, which hopefully some people got some good content out of this. They're going to go tell a friend. Like, you're giving this away for free. So actually, I'm going to change that. If you like this podcast, go and tell your friend about this podcast. There you go. That's what we're going to do instead. Just by being good to people and putting out good information and treating everybody with respect and stuff, it comes back tenfold.
Yeah.
I know that's very hippie-ish of me to say, but that's the conclusion that we drew the other day. It's just being a good human works.
No, I don't think it's hippie at all. I always say, when I'm talking about mindset stuff or somebody setting a goal, I always kind of put the disclaimer up first. Don't think I'm a fairy saying this stuff. Like, but
Yeah.
No, Gar, I think it's been genuine and authentic as well, because if I'm talking to you now on a podcast, you're not trying to be some guy that's different. Whereas if I travel onto City Gym, I can be down to you in 50 minutes. You're not going to be changing your stance and tone and the way you talk to me. Do you know what I mean? It's been authentic in every sense of the word, and no, that's brilliant. That's a nice way to kick off the first podcast.
Sweet, man.
Gar, I think we're going to leave it at that, and thank you for coming on. I think the last thing I want to ask you too is, where can people find more about Gar?
Perfect. First of all, I want to say it's an absolute honour to be the first guest, man. Thank you so much.
No problem.
You can find me on Instagram. My handle is garbenn_CG. That's GARBENN_CG.
CG, sweet. And you're on the Sigma Nutrition website as well, anyway, Gar.
I'm on the Sigma website as well.
Yeah, I'm going to be putting together some show notes page, and I'll be popping it up on my website as well, and all that kind of crack. But Gar, stay in the line afterwards. I'm going to talk to you for 2 minutes. And,
no bother, bud.
So guys, that was Gar from City Gym in Limerick, and again, a massive thank you for tuning into this very first episode. I do hope you've taken something away from that you can actually go away and implement. But in terms of where the show notes are going to be, they're going to be over on docfitnessonline/podcast, and that's docfitnessonline.com/podcast. And one thing I wanted to get started with these first 3 foundational episodes, as I'm calling them, is that I want to get started with what this podcast is all about. Something to do with training, something to do with mindset, and something to do with nutrition. And I cannot wait to bring you the next 2 guests which we have coming up, which we have next week. We have Mr. Pat Divley talking all things mindset and where to get started with all that, followed by Danny Lennon, which is going to dive into everything nutrition and setting up a fat loss diet. So thank you again for tuning in, and we shall chat to you next time. Bye-bye.